Because we are on Facebook Live and we are live streaming, that we need to get the show on the road. So that's an exciting new twist. Anyway, good morning on this beautiful morning. Always so happy to be in Southern California. My name is Mark Smelzer. I'm the publisher of JCK Magazine and JCK Online. And for those who aren't sure what a publisher does, I run the business side of things. So I mainly oversee the advertising sales. I oversee the production, the distribution, the marketing, obviously play a big role in the strategic decisions. And then we have an editor-in-chief, and she is in charge of the content in the magazine. But together, we pull the magazine together. Just a little plug. Here's JCK Magazine. This is here today, and it's particularly well-timed because it's our 150th anniversary this year. We are one of 3 magazines in America that are still extant after 150 years, which is phenomenal. But our editors took on the truly Herculean task of trying to comb through 150 years of the magazine, plus research 150 years of the jewelry industry, and fit it into one issue of the magazine. And I so wish someone could have handed me this issue when I started in this business 15 years ago in a very sort of unlikely way, because there is so much in here that I've learned over the last 15 years, and this is like a crib sheet on the industry. Plus, it's just fascinating and beautifully written. So please, please be sure and grab a copy of this today and treat it as a keeper. Read it cover to cover. It's again, just perfectly timed for people who are starting in the business. At any rate, I've done this panel, Creative Careers, several times, which is an honor, and it's always a blast. It's always a lot of fun. The point of this panel is to look at careers that are slightly different from the sort of typical or average careers in the industry. Every year, the GIA team puts together a terrific panel, and this year's is no exception, of folks who have found their way into interesting, original, unique roles in this industry. And as you'll hear, a lot of times there are twists and turns along their way on their career path. There are opportunities that sometimes come out of nowhere. And there's themes that emerge about keep your head down, but keep your head up. Always be looking to the other thing, but do what's in front of you well. You never know where life will take you. Fun stuff like that. So what I typically do is I'll read a quick bio on each of the panelists, and after I'm finished with the bio, they'll take 5 or so minutes to talk about their career path. When we're all done, I have a couple of questions that they've prepared for, and then hopefully we'll have some great feedback from the audience. So just quickly, my path, which is also unusual. I'm an old magazine guy. I one day found myself working as an assistant at a city magazine in Los Angeles called Buzz, making media kits on a printer where the entire thing moved for one copy, and would spend all night making 300 media kits. And then that led me to be the associate publisher of Variety, the entertainment trade, which for years ago was part of a big conglomerate of 60 trade magazines. As you know, the magazine industry has been very impacted by technological change. But at the time, it was a huge organization. And there was a big shakeup one day, and I was told that I was now the publisher of JCK. And I knew nothing about the jewelry industry. I went home that Friday night and started thinking about what my next job would be, because there was no way I was going to stay for that. And within a week, I went to something called the AGS Circle of Distinction, and met a lot of people and thought, oh, I like this. And that was 15 years ago. It's been an amazing, amazing ride. So again, you never know where life's going to take you. But at any rate, let's get started with introductions and allow our panelists to say a little bit about themselves, and I will read. Oh, look, they're all in order. Okay, good. Okay, first off, we have Baba Blumkin, GG, president and co-founder of Luxe Jewelry and Loan. Baba was born in Costa Rica and grew up in the beach areas of La Jolla and Pacific Beach. He graduated from La Jolla High and comes from a family that has been in the jewelry and pawn businesses for generations. His journey in the jewelry and pawn business started after he graduated from GIA. ta-da, with a GG degree. In LA, he worked an apprentice under his cousin, the King of Pinks, Diamonds, Alan Friedman in Beverly Hills, well known. After years of working and learning the jewelry business, he met Jordan Tabak Bank and began working in an exclusive high-end pawn loan business in Beverly Hills. He continued pairing those skills. He continued working at the International Gem Tower in New York, and there he expanded the business and made lifelong friends. After many years of hard work and dedication, he made the decision to move his family back to San Diego, which I envy, and joins forces with his twin brother to open up Luxe Jewelry and Loan in their old beloved neighborhood. So please welcome Baba, and let's hear a little bit about your background, Baba. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for having me. First and foremost, I owe GIA a tremendous amount of what they've created, a foundation for my career. I graduated GIA in 2002, and it's just been amazing. The lifelong friends that I've created, the business connections, you really cultivate a serious foundation to grow into whatever field you really want coming from GIA, because you don't know what you could really get into. My first job getting out of GIA was working for a diamond wholesaler in Los Angeles in the 550 building, walking around with a backpack full of diamonds, going building to building, floor to floor, trying to sell diamonds. And imagine how difficult that is, knocking on doors, nobody knows who you are with a backpack full of diamonds. It's a little stressful too, because you got $250,000 on your back, but you know, you learn how to deal with people saying no quite a bit when you're knocking door to door. So it toughened me up quite a bit my first job. And then I segued from that to working for my cousin Alan Friedman in Beverly Hills, where I learned quality control, manufacturing, sorting diamonds, building his line pieces, dealing with Neiman Marcus and a bunch of large retailers. The exposure that I gained there was tremendous, as well as the people that I got to deal with. I mean, you never know who is going to walk through the doors in Beverly Hills. I mean, people you see on TV, and you know, I would never mention who they are, but it was quite fun dealing with those characters and individuals. After working for Alan, I started my own business, which was amazing, designing jewelry, mainly bridal was what I was specializing in. All my friends were getting married at the time. The economy was great. I had a thriving business, and then things kind of went to the gutters with the economy, and everything was real difficult. So I had to basically shut down that business, which was really difficult for me, but I had to go back and work for someone else. So I went back to the drawing board, came to GIA, and went to the career fair in 2010, met my good friend and old boss, Jordan Tabak Bank. He had this sign sitting out there that said "Pawnbrokers to the Stars," and what's a pawnbroker to the star? So we started talking, we hit it off. He's a great guy, and had one interview, had a second interview, got hired full time, and started learning the pawn business, which is very dynamic. It's different than your typical jewelry type of job. It's really finance based, and there's so much regulation and laws involved with being a pawnbroker, depending on what state you're operating in, what jurisdiction, so on and so forth. I mean, we deal with local police departments, we deal with the Department of Justice, and the laws are constantly evolving, so you have to stay up on all the laws. I mean, we have a new law that's coming into place in 2020 that we have to completely change all of our contracts. That being said, working for Jordan in Beverly Hills was tremendous. He gave me the opportunity to move to New York and open their flagship location in the Gem Tower on 47th Street. I did that for about 4.5 years and met some amazing people. Once again, saw some amazing pieces, from red diamonds, blue diamonds, things that are really you only see in the museums, and I've had the exposure to be able to work with those things, and it's amazing. That was all created because of GIA and me stumbling upon Jordan downstairs. So it can happen for anyone, and I just truly appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to you guys, and it's just an amazing opportunity. Now I have moved back from New York, obviously, and I've started my own company in Pacific Beach. It's called Luxe Jewelry and Loan. It's a hybrid jewelry store, pawn shop, different than what we did with Beverly Loan and New York Loan. We do custom jewelry, we do repairs. We are a full service jewelry store, focused just as much on the jewelry side as the pawn side. We purchase from the general public, and we do a lot of custom designs. We carry quite a few lines of contemporary jewelry in our store, and we've been open a year and a half. You know, the trials and tribulations of a new business in the market that we're in. It's been somewhat difficult, but you know, problems are opportunities for solutions, and if you look at life that way, things can be much easier. And that's all about I have to say, and I can't wait for some questions. If you have any, I'm open.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Baba. Okay, next up we have Wade Clar. Wade is a friend, and Wade is also the Director of Brand Development, COO for Jules Bryant, a San Diego-based couture jewelry designer. In this role, Wade channels his passion for jewelry and rapport with retailers, suppliers, and industry leaders to create value for the brand. He oversees sales, brand development, merchandising, marketing, and training. So busy. In his prior roles, Wade worked with couture designers at the wholesale level in high-end jewelry sales with Chopard at Neiman Marcus and in direct response television. He was the first graduate of the GIA's BBA program. I didn't know that. Also completed the JBM program at GIA and received his associate's degree from St. John Fisher College in 2004. He's a member of the event board of WJA San Diego chapter. He's on the national WJA 101 mentor program and has had his jewelry photography featured in 3 books. And he enjoys beach town living in Oceanside, California. Thank you, Wade.
How's everybody doing? Good, good. I just want to start off by thanking GIA, its entire staff, Terry and Mackenzie for the phenomenal museum exhibit that they put together, Mark for the panel, having me on, and all of the panelists and everybody here that's coming. Sort of humbled. I've been going to events and listening to other industry leaders for many years, and finally now finding myself up here thinking about what's the most profound way to be in the jewelry industry. Was it to be more professional? Was it to be more proficient? Was it to be more productive? Sort of where my story begins. 2004, I was living in upstate New York. For a long time, I knew that my heart wasn't there, and that I was going to search for a passion somewhere else in life, but I didn't know where. I did 2 years at a private school in upstate New York. Packed up my car, drove 57 hours in 3 days, and landed in Vista, California, which is not too far from here. One day I was getting some help on a resume. I promised my Nana that I would finish college, and I had to pay for it. So I was going to have a passion. The gentleman that would become a future very important mentor in my life told me that GIA had a new school of business, an accredited business program. I should go take a look at it. I knew nothing about the jewelry industry, no family in the business. I didn't know the first thing. I took a tour at GIA in 2004. And instantly my passion became very vivid. I knew exactly, I didn't know what in the industry, but I knew I was going to be in this industry. So from there, I went to Tucson very strategically, walked booth to booth, had a plan. I knew that I could do something for a lot of people, but I needed to know, once I had my Bachelor of Business from GIA and the Jewelry Business Management program, was anybody going to value that? Because it was a new program. And who, I didn't have any experience, so who was going to hire me? I ended up getting a job for a direct response jewelry television company based in Atlanta about 60 days after I graduated. I moved there. I was there for 3.5 years, a liaison between front of the house, back of the house. I worked with in-house stone cutters, 2 bench jewelers. I did a little bit of on-air. And then from there, I was actually at Career Fair. I would come back here, and I was speaking with Anna Heyman, who some of you may know. And a prolific jewelry designer walked up. I was introduced briefly, and that was sort of a kismet moment in my career. We sat down in career coaching, and about 60 days later, she offered me a position for inventory and office manager based in Solana Beach. So from there, wholesale side, it was a completely different world for me. Worked with all the retailers across the country, Neiman Marcus to other high-end boutiques in Aspen or wherever, and really got to understand what it meant to be a designer and how to differentiate yourself to the sales staff at the retail level. Also learned a little bit about in-house manufacturing. From there, I sort of like use the analogy of a ladder, and every rung, like the first rung you step on, was GIA for me. The next one was the direct response television. And after that, I had the wholesale side, but what I didn't have was the retail side of it. So the next rung on my ladder was the retail side. I took a position in Neiman Marcus in San Diego in about 2011 or 12. I was there for about a year and a half, transferred to the Newport location for Neiman's, working high fine jewelry sales. Visual merchandising, working with clients, building a book. I had no book, and within about 2 years, I did almost over $1 million, 1.2 in 2 years. So I was really happy with that. I got to meet a lot more designers, and at that point, I knew that I wanted to be back on the wholesale side. I was asked by WJA in San Diego to speak on a panel. On that panel was Julez, my current boss or mentor or both. And we sort of hit it off, sort of same thing. I needed something different on the wholesale side. She needed somebody that had some industry experience in a different way and was hungry, and I was very hungry. So we hit it off. We say we dated for about 6 months. I knew exactly the things that my expectations were and what I wanted out of working with a high-end couture designer, and she knew what she wanted. And when you can manage those expectations, everything's a lot more copacetic. So we started about 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago. I've been working for Julez. I oversee all of our business decisions, all of our retail stores. We've grown from 15 to 40 in about 2.5 years. I oversee sales. I have a team in New Jersey, here as well. Operations, in-house, marketing and social media, a little bit of production. I source all goods, sort of a myriad of different things within the business. But it's really about our team. We really have shared values. It's not just about how many retail doors can we get in. It's sort of, what are the relationships that we can make and how can we differentiate ourselves. And part of what I do is I've seen the industry from different perspectives now. So I can bring that and show the sales staff, look, I want my unfair share of time. When somebody comes in, I want them to think Jules Bryant, not anybody else. So I work really hard on doing that. I'm on the board for WJA in San Diego for events as co-chair, and also on the National Mentorship Board for WJA. I love this industry. It's very, very passionate to me. Lots of great people here, lots of people you can learn from. That's pretty much it. There's 3 things I definitely want to leave people with today. First one is every day you go to work, no matter if you're just starting out or anything, just learn something new. Take something out of your day, no matter what it is, even if you're having a hard day. Secondly, network. It's been one of the biggest challenges for me and one of the biggest rewards. Going to events, meeting different people, running into people in the industry, you really get a different perspective on where you're going to go next. And lastly, tough times don't last, tough people do. So just keep plugging away and you'll get where you want to be. So that's it.
Awesome. I can attest to that, in that you walked right up to me at an event and said, hi.
I saw this guy.
And we've been friends since.
Yeah. I used to open up JCK magazine every day at school at GIA and see his face, and I'd be like, I got to meet this guy.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, next up, another Southern Californian, Alexandra Hart, metal artist and designer, and Goldsmith. Alexandra is known for her sophisticated and artful couture jewelry and metal sculpture. She has a bachelor's and master's in art making and metalsmithing and fashion experience designing for Karl Lagerfeld and Givenchy jewelry, and with fine jewelry design and goldsmithing with Barbara Heinrich Studio. She's achieved a synergy among artistic inspiration, high design, and skillful craftsmanship. Her work is about celebrating beauty found in natural forms made of natural materials, championing a sustainable natural world. She launched her business in '95 and began marketing her socially responsible company to retailers through premier American Craft Council trade shows and the Buyer's Market of American Craft. She established herself as a creative artist with leading craft and art galleries around the U.S. She won in 2009 the Centurion, which is a prestigious trade show, the Centurion Emerging Designer Award, having been selected by the World Gold Council's campaign. She shifted her focus to the fine jewelry market, bringing her sustainable vision to the luxury market while maintaining a small studio jeweler's quality. At the same time, she continues to create wearable art sculpture pieces. In every way, Alexandra tries to reduce the negative impact her own life has had on the planet, while working in leadership to more broadly help improve the world, from obsessively reducing consumption, using recycled products in general, to board positions such as president of Ethical Metalsmiths and board secretary of Compassion for African Villages, awesome, as well as being a Rotarian and a mentor of teenage girls. Alexandra actively participates in the greater good, so we're happy to have you. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, so I haven't started. Thank you so much. So GIA is wonderful to have a day like this. And we're here for those entering the career, dreaming to find a career. And so I'm going to give you like an origin story, more like I was a dyslexic, shy, creative artist kid of intellectual academic parents who had no clue what they're going to do with this kid. You know, they had these, you know, where did this kid come from? And at one point in my school career, they were warned I would never go to college. Your daughter will never get into college. And I basically, they also sort of countered that with, for my sake, to always do my best. And they built into me to always do my best, because that's the best you can do. And so what that made in me was serious, prove it attitude. Like, I am okay, right? So from an early state, not knowing where I was gonna go, what I was gonna be able to do, you know, I was dealing with that. So in high school, I discovered, or it discovered me, a silversmithing class as like an extracurricular thing. And it was way too fun. It was way too good. It was like sneaking the icing off the cake. Do you know what I mean? Like, I felt guilty. You know, it was like, this is too good. So I knew I had to kind of figure that out in my life. And then I went to college and got into college because of the silversmithing. I sold work to the interviewer. And I mean, you know, something to prove. And came out of college knowing that this is what I wanted to do. But it was a liberal arts college. Again, parental control wanted me not to be a crazy wild artist entirely. So I worked, so I'm not from a jewelry family. So what do you do? What do you do? How do you break into that? Like, no one I knew. Where do you go? So I was in the Boston area at the time, and someone told me that Rhode Island was where a lot of jewelry companies are. Like, you've heard of Monet and, you know, sort of costume jewelry companies. So this is, you know, it'll date me, but pre-internet, I drove to Rhode Island and opened the Yellow Pages and sent my resume to every jewelry company I could find. Like, archaic, but hey, someone called. And I got a job at RJ Manufacturing designing Givenchy jewelry and Lagerfeld after that. And this is before the end of that giant, you know, 10-pound jewelry that you would buy at department stores. And here's another sort of fascinating moment. Again, you just don't know how you're going to get there. I met someone there who, when I was describing this incredible world of making, designing, whatever, she's like, that world exists, and I didn't even know. She said, your boyfriend goes to graduate school in a town with a really amazing master's program. You should go. And so thanks to one person in my life, this transitional moment, I ended up getting basically full scholarship ride to graduate school. I mean, come on, right? And came out of there, and I was the first non-German that Barbara Heinrich hired because she would import her goldsmiths because of the amazing programs there. So there, and this is another point I want to make, working for someone else, and everyone's talked about that, you really build your perspective of how you might want to do it yourself. I didn't know if I wanted to do it myself. Turns out I did. So coming out of costume jewelry, moving into fine jewelry, learning goldsmithing, German-style goldsmithing, and basically a company, a small studio business, that was like exactly what I wanted to do. And so when I left Barbara's studio, I launched my business. It was time to be my own designer. And it was really amazing. Again, back to socially responsible. So to me, career is like life goal and satisfaction in your life. Like, you've got to follow your dream. You don't have any clue necessarily how you're going to get there. But to me, socially responsible, initiatives, I'd always done it myself. But I realized, thanks to WJA, that collaboratively and working into leadership, you can build consensus and have a way bigger impact. And so WJA at one point taught me Compassion for African Villages. I basically inherited a nonprofit. I'm currently president of Ethical Metalsmiths. We are making a difference, a bigger difference. And to me, bringing all those worlds, to me, it's part of my career, to make that difference in community. I never could have guessed. My parents would never guess, leadership roles, anyway. So unexpected, but I would do it over and over again, So thank you, Mark.
That's awesome. Okay, next up, we have one of two New Yorkers, and I'm just noticing here, one of two University of Oklahoma graduates.
That's exactly right.
We have double Sooners in a row. Okay, so first up, my friend Jenny Luker, who is the president of the Platinum Guild International USA. With nearly 25 years of experience devoted to working with jewelry designers, manufacturers, and retailers, Jenny holds the position of president of Platinum Guild International USA. In this role, she is responsible for the strategic development of the platinum jewelry industry in the US. She leads her team in creating marketing and trade programs to promote awareness and education for consumers in the jewelry industry. She holds a BA from the University of Oklahoma and an MA from Cal State Fullerton, both in sociology. Additionally, Jenny is the president of the Women's Jewelry Association, which, you have just a little sentence here, but I know it's a giant role.
It's a big role.
It's a big role.
It's a great one.
Executive board member of the Jewelers Vigilance Committee, board member of the Jewelers for Children, and a member of the 24 Karat Club in New York. So welcome, Jenny.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, and I'm already inspired by all of the stories that have been shared this morning. My journey starts in Oklahoma in 1995. I graduated from the university with my degree in sociology, and about 3 months before I graduated, my husband's job transferred him to Southern California, which I was delighted about. So he and I moved to California, and I enrolled at Cal State Fullerton. My intention was to get my master's and then get a PhD in sociology. I was going to teach, I was going to be in academia, I was going to publish books. That was my life path. And so I got to California. It was about 6 weeks before school started, and I had done every possible touristy thing I could do, and I was bored. So I thought, you know what, I'm just going to go get a job, and I'll see what I can do and see if I can do that and go to school, and let's see what happens. So I went to a temp agency. I don't know if anybody remembers temp agencies, but they used to exist, and you used to be able to go and get a job for a day or a week or a month or however long. And so I went to the agency, and they said, okay, we'll call you when we have something. So I said, great. So the next morning at 9 o'clock, they called me, and they said, can you be somewhere at 10 a.m.? And I said, sure. And so it was in Newport Beach in Fashion Island. I was like, okay, that's pretty good. And it was Platinum Guild International. So I started answering the telephones when we used to answer the telephones. And the team there was getting ready to go to the GIA New York show. So they had just let go of their receptionist. I was there with them for about 6 hours, and then they said, we're leaving for a week. Can you organize the office, and can you figure out some things to do? I said, sure. I'll make myself productive. So they come back, and I was there for about 3 months, started school. I was going to school at night, working during the day, and the temp position was over at 3 months. So Lori Hudson, who was the president at the time, said, we'd love to hire you full time. And I said, that would be great. It's working out really nicely. And I said, but I will be here for 2 years. That's it. I will be here for 2 years, and then I'll graduate with my master's, and I'm going to get my PhD, and that's it. And she said, great. So I started helping with advertising and PR and communications, and 24 years later, it's the only job I've ever had, and I'm the president of the company. So, I have had, I think it's fairly unique in having staying with one company, but the opportunities that I've had within this one company have been tremendous. Again, I started answering the phones. I've been able to do everything. I say I've basically done everything except pay the bills. I write the checks now. I sign the checks. I don't write them. But it's really been an amazing opportunity. And with Platinum Guild, we are able to work with so many different people. We work with designers, we work with retailers, we work with manufacturers, we work with GIA, and other trade associations. So it's really been a great journey for me, because I think for me it's all about the collaboration and the people that you work with. What I do is fantastic and fun and amazing, and is pretty great because we can kind of say this is what we want to do today, and we're able to do it. But I think the most important part is this industry. And I find once you are in it, it's hard to get out. I think that's kind of the story from, Mark didn't think he would still be here. But I think you'll start to find that the relationships through WJA or different organizations or attending school here, you really create not only relationships within the industry, but very, very lifelong friends. And so I think that's a very unique part of being a part of this business. And one that's for me is the most rewarding. I think that's kind of my story.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Jenny. And last but not least, we have my friend Tiffany. Tiffany was recently introduced to our industry, so kind of like my story, her story is similar, but it didn't happen that long ago. But we're so excited to have her be a part of the industry at the level at which you are. Tiffany is the CEO and General Counsel of the Jewelers Vigilance Committee, the JVC as we all know it in the industry. The JVC is a 103-year-old New York-based organization, so JCK was 47 when you started. You got us, almost got us. So a based organization serving the jewelry trade on all manner of legal and compliance issues. She currently serves on the boards of the United States Kimberly Process Authority, the United States Jewelry Council, and CIBJO, which I have to admit, I'm not even sure what CIBJO is an acronym for. I just know it is CIBJO, but maybe you can talk to that. She began her career as an attorney at Paul Hastings, LLP in Los Angeles, later moving to in-house legal and leadership roles in the private and public sectors with a focus on health, the arts, and the environment. She is also a graduate of the University of Oklahoma and the NYU School of Law, and is a member of the California Bar Association, and she resides in New York City. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really great to be with you here today. Thank you to Mark and thank you to GIA for putting this together and for inviting me to come. I thought a lot about what I was going to say today, and I hope that I decided on the right thing. I think there's so many different ways I could sort of package my story: tragedy, comedy. There's like lots of different angles on it. But I thought, well, maybe I'll just try to keep it short and just be as honest as I can, and maybe that will be helpful to somebody. So I will say that back in college at OU, which is like, you never run into other OU people outside of Oklahoma. It's like truly bizarre. But At OU, I've always been someone who had a creative practice, like I'm sure many people in this room. And so at OU, I did spend 2 full years doing a studio art class in metal design. So I learned how to cast and how to set stones and do all these things. And that's one of many sort of forays I've had into creative practice. And when that ended, back in college, I thought, oh, that was interesting. I'll never use that again, or see anything about that, or that will never be relevant to my life, and then flash forward like 20 years. But I'll say that I was always kind of like a real uptight kid, and I was very focused and very worried about the future and doing things right and getting things right. And so I studied really hard all through school and had my sights set in college on going to law school, doing all the right internships and all that sort of thing, or whatever, getting all the right resume together. And then I ended up going to this like fancy law school. I moved to New York City and happened to be there at what was a very good time in the economy. I graduated in 2002 and ended up having like, if any of you guys know somebody who's been through law school, like you kind of there's this whole like regimented process about how the job situation works afterwards. So I was like, along with all my classmates, there was nothing special about me, recruited by like all these different people, all these different law firms. So I had like 14 job offers and got flown all over, and they sent us presents to try to get us to say yes. Like we were like basketball players or something. And it was just like the time in the economy. It was just a moment in time. It was nothing about us specifically. And it seems so funny now because things have changed so much. And it's almost like this weird flip side of the unfortunate kids who graduated from the same programs in 2009, 2010, 2011, who also had an extreme experience, but just like the other side of the experience. So probably the worst thing that could happen to a 25-year-old is being treated like you really know what you're doing and that you're so special, and really sort of set my expectations in kind of a bizarre way. So when I started working, I had this fancy law firm job, which is what you're supposed to want and what you're supposed to do. And I got, you can probably see where this is going, I got a few years into it, or a few weeks into it really, and realized like I'm in the wrong place. I've spent all this time reaching for these things, and now that I'm here, that I'm being told there's more to reach for, and then the next thing, and the next thing, and be stressed out and achieve this, and I was just like, nope. What am I gonna do? So I took a kind of alternate. I went in-house to a very secure job at an investment bank called Bear Stearns, and which doesn't exist anymore, and to kind of figure myself out. And I was like, I got to burn it to the ground. Like I'm 30, and this is not going to work for me. So I sort of had to be honest with myself about how things really felt inside, despite how they looked on the outside. So I just kind of had a voice whispering to me saying, okay, you've lived this kind of rigid life, and you need to really, while you're still young enough, experiment. Like you need to make some mistakes. Get out there and just make some mistakes. And other people might not understand, but I knew somehow that I needed to just go through this process and try some things. And so that's what I did. And I worked at a startup that was supposed to be not a great idea because they hadn't even gotten their Series B financing yet. And last week they were sold to a private equity firm for 15 times my strike price, which I wish I would have bought like so much more stock than I actually did. And while that was happening, Bear Stearns went under. So it's just sort of like those funny things. My path is very different, even though we're both from Oklahoma, than Jenny's. She's been able to really build on things in the same place. And my path has been more about accepting change and embracing it and really not being afraid of everything changing. So once I was at the startup for a few years, I had always done a lot of nonprofit work, and I just really thought, kind of after 2008, we were all having these kind of moments of the world shifting and changing, and I thought, I'm going to devote myself to nonprofit work full time. And so that's what I did. And I ran an organization a mentorship organization in New York for at-risk girls in New York City, which was great. And that was a one-to-one nonprofit thing. And I thought, again, I was in the position of, this looks great from the outside, but direct service providing and program providing was not really the right thing for me. And I thought, let me try grant making. It's in the same universe. And so I got a job running a foundation that funded pediatric cancer research medical grants. And I did that and built that organization into a global organization from just a New York-based organization. And that was so much fun, and I really loved it. And I thought, I'm going to be in philanthropy forever. And then I was sort of looking around for my next step in philanthropy, and I just thought, this was just like whatever 3 years ago, and I was like, I'm going to just look on LinkedIn. I have my resume up or whatever, and they have this new jobs tab. Like, what does that do? And it's an algorithm that like reads your resume, and then everyone knows about this now, but it sort of matches you to jobs. And there's this job at JVC open, which hadn't been open in 20 years. I took over from someone who'd been there for 20 years, and they were looking for someone who both had been a practicing lawyer and who had actually run a nonprofit and knew all the like rules and sort of had demonstrated that management experience. And there's very few people who've done both, because both are kind of safe, good paths, and there are not that many people who kind of break away from one and actually go do the other. A lot of people, I think, want to do the other, but never actually do. So what I thought were two completely different paths ended up coming back together in this job. And so because there weren't that many choices for them to choose from, I got hired. Jenny was on the committee that hired me. So that's kind of been a little bit in a nutshell of what it's been like for me so far. And I think for me, just kind of clearing the channel through my own creative practice, or maybe you're musical or you're physical or you like to cook or whatever it is, just being open to what kind of my internal voice is telling me has always led me to I never got the full picture revealed at once, but it always kind of knew what the right next step was. And so as long as you kind of know the right next step, I think you're in a really good place, and you can be honest with yourself, even if around you people might not kind of understand, and you might not understand how it makes sense. But also let me say, so I run the JVC, and so in case it's ever helpful to you guys, we're the only organization, we've been around for over 100 years. We do legal compliance and education, and there's all these really specific rules that apply to jewelry around how you can advertise. If you have questions about intellectual property, we also do a lot with anti-money laundering. We try to cover all the major topics that hit the jewelry industry. So we're here to serve you guys, and we're member-supported. We're a membership organization, so we're available if you ever want to call. We push out a lot of education on all the topics you need to know about. So we'd love to have you part of our community, and we'd love to help you as you grow your own career.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. I put together some questions that I sent to them ahead of time, and we've sort of touched on most of them in different ways, which is great. But the one that I maybe each of you or a few of you want to talk about a little bit more in depth is the role that extracurricular activities like the association memberships, we've heard WJA mentioned, other organizations, volunteering, attendance of events, mentoring, what role that has played in your path. And I can start with myself. I mean, you're sort of looking at it. This is something that I've gotten to do several times. It's something that obviously I'm doing on a voluntary basis, but it's so enriched my life because every year I either hear from friends that I've known but I've never heard their backstory and I'm so inspired, or I meet new people. And gosh, it's been like 30 different people that I've met this way, and now when I go to events around the world, I run into people who've been on this panel, and it's just always great. So that's just one little story. I mean, I'm also on the board of the Jeweler Security Alliance, which is the organization that prevents crime in our industry, which is probably my biggest honor in this industry, and I love giving back through that. So, and there's just no question that it benefits my career on a practical level, but on a personal level, on an emotional level, it's hugely rewarding. So I'm not sure, would anyone like to talk further to association stuff or getting involved?
Sure. Go.
this isn't like the official JVC answer, but I would just say that that like this industry, like so many others, so much of what really happens is informal. So it's and sort of these kind of networks that are not part of what sort of you might think. So I think it's great to get involved with, as you know, the organizations that feel right to you, because that's how you'll hear the gossip first, or how you'll get the information first, or how you get the real story. And I think it can be challenging if you don't fall into like the kind of like white, straight, cis guy thing. And the further you are away from that, categorically, it can be a little harder. So find the mentors out there. I think one thing that's been really great for me that's been different in this role than in others is that there are some people who have been, these sort of family businesses and people who are really proud of this industry and who are on the verge of retirement in their 70s or so, and they really want to see this industry thrive and do better and do great and live on and modernize. And so if you can find those people, they'll be your biggest champions, and they're in a place that they can be your biggest champions, even if they don't look exactly like you, but they are more out there in this industry than any other industry I've seen. So I think identifying some people who can really be your champion, who are at the end of their career, and then just finding the right organization to be involved with. I think it can be easy to think that you've got to just be at your desk and do your job, whatever your job is, but you really can be so benefited by being a part of one or two like crucial organizations or kind of informal organization groups.
You raised a point where, community, or nonprofit or a relationship to nonprofit and giving back. By the giving back, you don't have to have something to give back, and what you get in return is more than you give. So that balance, it feels like when you're stepping into a nonprofit that you're going to be giving, but the reward is unbelievable. The networking, the people you meet, as Tiffany was saying, the relationships, because really, this industry, though it's huge, is also small and intimate at the same time. That is so powerful. And when you work together with someone on a project, it's like, these are your people. So it's really, you're giving and you're seeing things happen way beyond yourself, but what you get is, the networking and the connections and, career building opportunities. That's sort of a misunderstanding, I think, culturally in our country right now, that charity is like a one-way thing, and it just isn't. You don't even have to call it charity. It's just life building. So,
I would just say too, there are a lot of different organizations and associations, and some people who've been in the business a long time will say there's too many. But I am of the vein that there are a lot that are specific for specific things. So there are lots of different jobs in this industry, as you can tell just by the representation here. So find the one, like Tiffany said, find the ones that make sense for you. I'll plug WJA just a little bit too. I'm the president of the Women's Jewelry Association, and to your point, that's probably been one of the most inspiring, and I've been very appreciative to have had the opportunity to be the president for the last 2 years, which ends in December. But it's been a very good honor. It's amazing to see the people, men and women, are both able to be members, but just to see the networking, see the collaboration, being able to give back in those different ways. And I think too the mentoring that is done, I'm mentoring someone right now, and it's amazing. I've learned, I think, way more from her than she's learned from me. Yeah. She's a 78-year-old woman who was in mergers and acquisitions for like 45 years. And at the age of, I think, 67, she decided to become a jewelry designer. And I mean, it's like how we found, and she, what she said, she found, because she's from Georgia, and she'd seen my resume that I was from Oklahoma and that I had a sociology background, and she was a sociology major in college. So it was like, it's those small connections that you make with someone, but the impact she has had on my life in the last 18 months we've worked together has been amazing. And to see her business grow and what she's been able to do, I've been really inspired. And then, the mentors that you make, you'll keep them forever. I mean, I have a mentor in the room of mine. Catherine Kimmel's been an absolutely amazing part of this industry for a long time, and of GIA. And to be able to work with your mentors is really an opportunity that the associations will do. You'll be able to join those and work much more closely with those people over the years. So I'd highly encourage you to seek out the organizations that make sense for you and become an active member.
Great.
I think a lot of people covered everything. I mean, I think just get out there, make yourself a little uncomfortable. You'll find your way. It definitely wasn't an easy thing for me. I knew nobody again, and just to go to these events, it was like, all right, just let me meet this person, let me meet that person. You just start connecting those dots, and before you know it, you'll be right, you'll be home, and the industry is very open arms. So once you start, getting your feet wet, you'll find your way.
And do you want to give a little plug for WGA San Diego, since I think a lot of folks
Yeah,
are
there's
local?
a couple people in the room. WGA San Diego, we're, I'd like to say largest, but second largest, I think, behind LA chapter. We have some amazing events. Anybody that's here or going to school, we always welcome. And you'll meet a lot of really cool people, and you never know what will happen. Maybe another door will open up for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on the local level, we've been really involved in the town council in Pacific Beach. It's just for our local community, but all the local business owners are involved, and you really have an ear of what's happening day to day and some of the trials and tribulations that these people are going through that you may not want to have to deal with blindsidedly. So it gives you a chance to get exposure to so many things. On more of a pond-centric level, we're involved in CAPA, which is California Pawnbrokers Association, and there's just so many laws and regulations that are constantly changing in our industry, as well as the jewelry industry as a whole. So being part of that gives us a chance just to see what's really going on with the evolution of law and regulatory systems that are in place. We're involved with lobbyists that go to Sacramento that try and push for our industries, because if people don't work for our industries to better them, there's pushback that is going to be a detriment to the way we operate. So being involved in CAPA is extremely important for us in our industry. And I think in all industries, we all have to work together to make it better.
Awesome. Turn my mic on. Well, let's see if there's any questions in the audience. And then if we still have time, I've got a couple more questions, but I'd love to see some feedback. So I saw a hand. Yeah.
Hello. My question is actually for Alexandra. What was it? You seem to have so many different passions that range all throughout the jewelry industry. What was it that allowed you to focus them and really be successful? Because I'm also an artistic wild child with a learning disability and a passion for artistic fashion jewelry, and I also want to improve the human cost of the jewelry industry throughout the world. So what was it that allowed you to focus all of those and to be successful as you are?
Well, that's been it turns out it's been part of my goal. I found myself, driving my business, and the business was trying to be socially responsible. And then I realized, back to this sort of community, thing, that just my own decisions, I couldn't shake, the bell loud enough for people to understand I'm really doing that. And so I started to reach out to others. And I kind of realized that once, and I learned it with WJA, because it's just an incredible organization, and I appreciate all the men who are involved as well, because until it is equal pay, we will still exist. So, but I realized that it was my vision, because it's what I wanted to do in my life. So I argue with my husband regularly about this. He says, I want to do this, I want to do that, and I'm like, I think you'd already be doing it if that's what you want. So I found I was already getting really involved and really spread thin. But I realized eventually that all of that is part of my life goal, And so that is my homework every day, is to try to pull them together. And I'm working really hard, like Compassion for African Villages, and I'll say it for just a nanosecond, was founded by a woman human trafficked to Vista, California. Who landed in Vista? Human trafficked from Zimbabwe to Vista, California. 3 years in a basement, escaped, founded Compassion for African Villages while she was going through nursing school at San Diego State, where I met her through my husband, who's a professor there. We became friends, we were neighbors, and she died of breast cancer 5 years ago. And she had started this thing. She's my inspiration. Like, I always wanted to go to Africa, but I never wanted to like safari. I wanted to like do something, right? And I wear this Zim dress for her. So that happened. I found myself doing that. And now I'm working to try to bring Compassion for African Villages into the work that's happening with Tawoma and Tanzanian Women Mining Association and the Awake, the Kenyan Women Association, this kind of thing. Like, we can pull these things together. So I haven't figured it all out, so there's not like an answer, but what I'm doing is I'm shepherding all these different interests, and I have to say, the closer they get to each other, the better I feel. It's like a rush. It's incredible. So I will talk to you more about that. I can relate. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Anyone else? Anybody on Facebook Live? Are they able to give questions? Okay, well let's do one more question then of mine for the panel. Allow me to open this up. Oh, so, and I remember this from my early years. It always seemed like a conundrum that you want to keep your head down while keeping your head up. So you want to focus on the work that's in front of you and do it as well as possible. But then there's this fear that if you do that, the next opportunity is not going to come along. That if you don't have your eyes and ears open. And I don't know if anybody has a thought to that or an anecdote about that point in your career where you did that and it paid off. I thought that might be inspirational.
I'll say, for me, it's sort of an opposite thing. Like, I was so focused on doing certain things that I started to say yes to everything, which spread me out too thin. So I had to learn a couple of years ago how to say no. I always wanted to, like, what do you need? I'll do that. Yeah, I can do this. And it was like, you can't manage a company that way. You can't grow that way. So it was sort of like staying focused, but really being strategic about what I was doing in the industry. And making sure that I was involved in the right organizations, like you said, like pick the right ones that are fit for you, you have shared values with, and then stay in that lane. So there's so many things going on out there. There's so many different aspects of the industry that you can be involved in, but I can't do everything. So I have to pick the ones that are the most important to me, the ones that I feel compassion for. So I'm heavily compassionate about the African Tanzanian situation right now, and that's been something that I've always wanted to do. So I think in the future I will find myself in a mine, hopefully, and just sort of getting into that world a little bit more. So we'll see, but I just think that's the most important thing. Is like, there's so many organizations, don't get into everything. Try to pick a few and get your feet wet and then see what really sticks. So.
Great. Anybody else?
I think it's just being open to focus on. I always say focus on what you can control. There are some things you can't control. So what can you do? What can you change? How can you take responsibility and move things forward? But I think there is something unique. Again, I haven't been in any other industries, but it feels extremely unique because of these connections. It's just, from being in this room today, there very well may be someone that's going to move you to that next step. Mm-hmm. I think that's a connection right here. I mean, it's interesting. Or what Mark was saying, that he sees panelists that he, worked with, and you see them in Hong Kong at a trade show or something. It's a very, very small and intimate business. It is very family oriented, and so. But if you're not part of a family, it's okay. You'll be embraced as part of the family. So I think it's being open to change or open to the next step, and and just, allowing for that flexibility to kind of see what's next. So that's kind of both sides of that coin, I guess.
I would also just add, not to sweat it too much,
Right.
what's for you will find you, at the risk of being like the Marianne Williamson up here. It will find you. I feel like I was doing all these other jobs to wait for this job that hadn't been open in 19 years. And I was just gathering up all these little pieces for that moment when it was free. Mm-hmm. And so I think, just clearing your channel and making your own internal right next step, and to just relax knowing that even if your lesson is banging your head against the wall in a certain way or crying on the kitchen floor again, it's just, that's part of it. And if you have a big career, you're going to have big feelings about it. It's not going to just be something off to the side. It's just as integrated as all the lessons you're learning through your relationships or through your money or through whatever. You'll go through these same huge emotional arcs with it. And that doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. It just means that you're really doing it.
Awesome. What I would add is, a lot of us have this preconceived notion of what we might consider the perfect job or the perfect situation. I think a lot of it's in the act of doing, getting out and just trying. The perfect job might not ever show up, but you might have 10 jobs that you put a feather in your cap from each one, and then you create your own perfect job or your own lane. Don't always think that the perfect situation is going to arise, because you can put yourself in a situation and make it better and create a new situation from that one. Mm-hmm. That would be my best suggestion to people, because you never know what's around the corner. Or taking a job in a new city or a new state, you may move into an office next door to the person that may be your future boss, and you may become the president of their company. Mm-hmm. You never know until you take action. So
I would just add while you never know, if you have a goal, aim for that goal. Really shoot for the moon. You will jump and miss and dive and whatever and keep your ears open, but if you have something you're really trying to do, don't start at the bottom, just aim for that moon and see how things open up to get you there. Mm-hmm. When I was starting my own business, I wanted to do trade shows because I love B2B. I still love B2B. I don't want to be a salesperson, I want to be a designer. And people said, "Oh, you're going to do street fairs?" It's no, I'm going to apply to the best show in my area. If you don't try to shoot for the moon, you're never going to reach the moon. Even if you're not going to reach it right away. I just want to say that, keep your head up, mm-hmm. aim high, and then, figure it out, keep your ears open, because you can't get there if you do have that goal. You can't get there without trying for that, Don't cut yourself short, no matter how insecure you are,
Awesome. I'll add one thing that comes to mind, and it seems like we've all had similar beginnings to our career. So I was talking about the media kit with the copier, and you at the temp agency. I remember temp agencies. But I just remember when I was starting off in ad sales, there was a friend of mine who wanted to get into ad sales, wanted to get into magazine ad sales, a growth industry at the time, and he kept coming after me, and I would say, hey, if you want to start off as an unpaid intern and make copies on the copier, the media kit, come on board. You never know what would happen. Oh no, I couldn't do that. That's beneath me. Oh no, I can't go back to that, because I can't remember what he was doing, but he had progressed fairly far in something else, and he thought, I couldn't possibly go back to the beginning. And literally, this went on for 5 years, and by the end, I was like, if you had come on board and started making those media kits 5 years ago, you'd be a category salesperson now, maybe a national salesperson like I was at the time, going to New York every month. So just embrace the work in front of you and don't think it's beneath you, and feel free to jump in and start at the bottom. Yeah. Another question?
It's not a question. I just wanted to thank you all for what you said I feel like it was exactly what I needed to hear, your stories and your growing experiences. Because I was getting a little down, but you guys said everything so beautiful.
Awesome.
We're here for you.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Talk to us.
Any other questions from the audience? Yes, Mark.
Building off of your comments, Wade, about find time in the day to learn something new. Maybe for the panel, what kind of advice would you give, or what are the tricks in very busy days that you have managing your job to stop and fuel curiosities that you have that can make yourself or your job better?
So when I first started in jewelry television, that's where I learned that. I was like, go every day. Okay, I didn't know anything about gemstones. I wasn't a GG. So I learned something about this. And when I would leave work, I would take 10 minutes, literally, and I'd sit in my car and I would just write down like about my day. And then there's a couple key points every day that would stick out. So that's something that I did then. As time has gone on, I sort of work a triage. Like that's my daily routine. I make an ABC list. Sales are first, and then I sort of work down. And I always find something. Even like today, I'm working with this piece, and it's very difficult. And I can't find the way it's connecting, and I'm like reaching out to all these other people, going through my list of contacts, and trying to figure out who can help me with this. So I don't know if there's anything specific, but for me, I try to go approach every day the same. And then throughout the day, there's always something that's going to come up. In this industry, there's so many different aspects to it. It's not like, I'm just doing so much. So you just got to keep your eyes open, I guess. It goes back to that. But I still work a list, and I still focus on those things. And that I think it's a good way for me to grow.
Yeah, so I live in New York, and my whole life is an extracurricular activity. Like, I just try to learn too many things every day, and with our role, we're sort of scanning the horizon for danger for the rest of the industry and trying to figure out everything that's going on in the legal landscape and how it might apply, and talking to federal agencies and talking to members and whatever. So for me, I think it's more the opposite, which is trying to contain it and say, okay, how do I know when my work is done for the day so I can like eat dinner or just be a person. So in New York, there's so many inputs and everything. So what I do at the beginning of every day is I just list 3 things that they can be really disparate categories that I know that if I can manage to take care of these 3 things today, then I am allowed to declare victory on the day. At the end of the day, no matter how I feel or what the note it ends on, if I can just tick through these 3 things that were my priority walking in for the day, then I can feel good about that and then just start again tomorrow. So it's kind of more about containing it than.
Awesome, Jenny.
I wish I could do that. That sounds really nice. What I do for the learning part, I set aside an hour, usually on Friday mornings. So Fridays it's a little quieter. So from 9:30 to 10:30, I set aside an hour. And I will say, okay, this week, so for instance, JVC just released these amazing videos, and they're in my inbox, but I haven't had time to watch a 2-minute video, right? That's the problem. You don't have all these things going on. So on Friday mornings, I move all those things that I need to do or need to watch or need to see in a separate folder, and during that hour, I do that. Or I need to reach out to my international colleagues and ask them questions, but I can't think about what I need to ask them. So I set aside an hour. It could be 15 minutes. It could be 3 hours, whatever it is. But setting aside that time, I don't book meetings then. People know not to book meetings with me then. That allows me that opportunity to do those things, because I think you're getting input from so many places. But I think it's important to get the input from where you're wanting it. I need to see those JVC videos. They're really important. I need to understand what my colleagues are doing in India. So setting aside that time is, I think, an important part of the
Can I build
planning.
on that?
You may.
So I think this took me only like 17 short years to learn. So like, you put like, I don't know how calendar based you guys are, but as you can probably guess, I'm like very into it. And with all kinds of color coding and stuff. And so I put all these goals on my calendar, but then it's like so much pressure if you have the goal and then the goal sneaks up on you. So what you have to do is you put the goal, and then you guys might already all know this, but you put the goal, and then now I've started putting like 1 or 2 blocks of time a week or 2 weeks before the goal so you're not just pressuring yourself with these end dates on your calendar, but you've actually blocked off time leading up to it that you can accomplish what you need to meet that goal that if you put deadlines on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
They taught you good skills at the University of Oklahoma. Alexandra, do you want to?
Two things, and I think that's brilliant. And I do something similar to that because, life is busy. I calendar my sort of time before that deadline. And if the calendar or something's telling me, then it's not just me, so it happens. I do start my days reading industry magazines, and hats off to that is the best issue I've ever seen. It was fast. It was just fabulous.
Another
so
plug.
I pay attention. I learn from that. And another sort of counter, so the opposite, you contain. I, at this point, say yes and figure it out later. So sometimes I say I'll do something like, oh my God, step into leadership, or oh my God, I'm going to do pave setting, but say yes and figure it out. So it drives me. So the calendar drives me, and this obligation drives me. It's out of me. It's not just me telling me. It's external, and that's what gets me. And whoa, you learn. If you said yes and a client's waiting for it, you figure that out. Or you ask for the help that you've figured out you have. So.
Baba, do you want to add anything? About
I had
go ahead.
The question that he asked.
How do you learn something new every day? How do you actually make that happen?
Mine's kind of on the fly, because if somebody brings in 20 antique pieces of jewelry, I don't have 4 hours to give them a dollar amount that I'm willing to pay. So a lot of it comes from education that I have, and I can identify to a certain degree what the value is, but to really get deep into it, after I make the purchase, I'll sit down for hours and go through the pieces and identify maker's marks and period pieces and so on and so forth, because no matter how good you are, there's so much out there when you're buying from the general public that you can't know everything. So I'm continually educating myself every day.
I'll just make a comment that it's a sort of a 2-point comment. First off, if you're starting in any industry in 2019, you're at this insane advantage because, the entire world is right here. And I was the kid that always grabbed a copy of the World Book when I laid down to watch the Brady Bunch. So I always was going back and forth. It was like, TV, internet. And so I just sort of obsessively am always learning off of this thing, and I used to knock myself for it. And then one day I suddenly realized, that's part of my day, and it's actually a calming device. It's an anti-anxiety device. It will seem as though, if I'm asked to do a big task and the next thing I do is go online and learn something, you would think oh, you're sloughing off, you're not. But no, that actually gives my mind a chance to rest. And on some level, I'm thinking about the answer that I'm going to give to that important question. But at the same time, I'm taking information in. So it's a great time to be able to learn something new every day, and it is just phenomenal. And I envy you all. Yeah, another question.
For Tiffany, as you're focused on regulatory and compliance issues in your workplace, is there a space for creative outlet or artistic expression, or do you keep that separate?
In our workplace?
Yeah.
Everybody at the JV's, I'm a painter. My colleague Sarah, who's downstairs doing coaching, is a semi-professional singer. She's also a lawyer. So we do, and I don't know if that's a function of being in New York. It tends to attract certain types of people, but we all have our creative practices outside, and I think we bring those personalities into work. And I feel like our work is really creative. So you look like you want to say something. Okay, please, Jenny.
I'm also on the JVC board, which is, again, another amazing organization, and it can be really dry and this. So I'm let them go through it. But the way they're presenting the information today is fantastic. They're coming up with really creative ways to ensure that the industry is following the regulations that we need to be following. And so I think in a very short amount of time, the JVC has moved into I think they're being very creative in their day-to-day work when it's about regulations and laws and
Right,
all
because
of
to
those
us it's
things.
interesting.
They love it, which is great.
Because we get into all these like incredible philosophical, like right now the FTC is reviewing what Made in the USA is going to mean. I think they're going to change it. And so we just went to this whole hearing about it, and it's like, what does that mean? Like, how can we think about these things? And how do what we do here in the US, how does that, and you mentioned CIBJO when you introduced me, like that's a global forum of people who have jobs like mine all around the world, and it's like, what is a pearl? What do we mean when we talk about these, you know, how when you advertise a diamond around the world, like what should that look like? So yeah.
Isn't there a big thing with the man-made diamonds right
Yeah.
now? Of
Yes,
what
there
you
is.
consider man-made versus synthetic?
There are many issues around laboratory grown, for sure, detection, whether or not it's you know, being passed along supply chain without being disclosed, or trying to disclose it the proper way. There are a whole waspness of issues around it.
And that actually speaks to the importance of subscribing to JCK, our newsletter, National Jewelers newsletter, In-Stores newsletter, GIA's newsletter. You want to be aware of all the issues that are going on in the industry, because that, you know, if you become aware of just how exploding, for example, the lab-grown area is, perhaps that's an opportunity for a career change. Perhaps that's a phone call to make or someone to speak to. You'll see Michael Barlerin is now heading up the lab-grown diamond group. I don't know what they actually call themselves, but you know, email him and say, hey, I'm in California, but I'd love to volunteer for the organization. So yes, exactly. There are ways to keep engaged, keep involved, and know what's going on. I think we have time for one more question. Anything else from the audience? Yeah.
So I know all of you have rather different careers, but it kind of sounds like a lot of what got you into your position is just kind of like following your own internal guidance and just kind of being yourself and what felt comfortable with you. How far, or how, try to rephrase the question. How important is that to keep an alignment along with like just general professionalism and not coming off just kind of like a canned response to people, but remain genuine? Like, how do you navigate that creative and expressive, but also professional and kind of, you know, everyone's acting the same way, behaving appropriately?
That's a good question.
What's too eccentric?
I would say that you got to be yourself. It's like something for me. I think just how I was raised. Like you have those internal values. You know, like you know what's right and what's wrong. Be genuine. Be honest. Like for me, like I said, I just needed to get an opportunity. I would I would write stuff out and sit in front of that paper at home and just go over it and over it and over it again. For my first time at Tucson when I was looking for a job. And then I think people see that in each of, you know, everybody here. We all have something that's different about us. And when you find that right match, your values match. You know, it's sort of like kismet. I think a couple of times I've met both the designers I've worked for. It's been instant. Like we knew that there was something there. We just need to figure out what the best way for it was. And neither of them had a position for me. So it was like we just sort of created something. So and just be yourself. I mean, as you get into your career a little bit more, you can open up a little bit more, but that was sort of my take on it.
I would say though that that's really important. I think with the people you're really invested with, you really have to have that authentic connection and really be yourself and really make that connection. But you do have to learn kind of code switching, and there are these different like segments, and you have to learn how to be around certain kinds of people in the industry. And I'm not talking about any one kind, but I think this speaks to your question, right? Like if you're with all of the really old white guys who run a certain part of the industry, that's a certain culture, it's a set of behaviors and a way of communicating. And I would be dishonest if I said I don't sort of have to switch that up depending on who I'm dealing with. And I think it's fun to learn how different groups of people communicate and what resonates with them. And I still feel like I'm being authentic, but it's just how can I present myself in a way that's going to actually help both of us and that's going to really get the message across. I'm not just me in every situation. I am like open to, okay, let me read the room. Let me, how will I be effective with this group or that group, or how can I get this person over here, and I think you do, and that is something that takes some time. And hopefully there's some people who can kind of clue you in on, and just be open to maybe a few like little zaps of learning how to kind of switch your code a little bit depending on who you're dealing with.
That's a kind of sensitivity to your environment. Like a chameleon is a chameleon. It's a creature that can change color. Like you can wear different stuff and still be you, And so it's true. Some places are buttoned up and some places are chill, and you don't have to not be you to like try it on and see if it fits, as well. So it is true. You must be yourself, but you don't really want to be inappropriate, in a certain circumstance. It's just important to be sensitive to that environment.
And as you move up and up, sometimes the game gets a little harder and more sophisticated and more nuanced too. And I think it's important to acknowledge that.
Right.
Anything else? Awesome. I think we're just about at time. So I want to thank our panelists. I can say we have a lot of experience. This is absolutely one of the best, if not the best panel I've ever been a part of or moderated. So congratulations and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mark.
And I want to thank the GIA for having me again. Sarah, thank you so much. Catherine, thank you. And Mark, welcome. We'll be working together. I'm excited. So we'll be up here for if you want to come and say hi and enjoy your careers.
Yeah.